Our next speaker, who is also going to announce the winner of the Harley-Davidson here, has been a friend and supporter of AMERIgreen for a long time. He's a long-time Lancastrian, although he sometimes resides in Europe now, and it's hard to catch up with him because he's doing all kinds of fun and exciting things around the world in energy. His name is Dan Desmond, and Dan was the Deputy Secretary of Energy and Technology for the Department of Environmental Protection, and really was one of the driving forces behind propelling Pennsylvania into the forefront of renewable energy and energy independence. And Dan, you won't find somebody who knows more about energy and technology related to energy than Dan Desmond. He is a wealth of information. He is a very generous man, has agreed to come and be the speaker today. Today, Dan works with some of the largest venture capital firms that are involved with green and energy technology, and he continues to work in the private sector helping to commercialize new technology to help our energy future. So, Dan Desmond, thank you very much for coming, and I know they look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Seth. I think first we're going to do the drawing for the Harley, yes? Afterwards. I'll have to make my speech quick. I want to tell you a story that began in 1956 when I was just a little shaver about the size of that little boy over there. There was a guy who worked for Shell Oil. He was a petroleum geologist, and he decided to publish a technical paper. And when his bosses found out what he was going to talk about, they got really, really nervous. But by that time, it was out in the technical journals, and it was too late. He said, I've come up with a little model here, and in the lower 48, we're going to have a peak of oil production in 1970. And there it is in 1956. Now, he was nearly laughed out of the profession. His name was Dr. M. King Hubbard. And everybody thought he was a nutcase. And the years went by, and the years went by, and 1970 rolls around, and don't you know, the lower 48 begins to peak and decline. And so people started taking some of his models more seriously, and other places in the world, like the North Sea in the mid-1990s, oil peaked and began to decline. Now, the people in the oil industry are very quick to say, well, yes, but we're going to drill for more. There's always more, there's always more, as though the earth was infinite. And the problem is, it's only the giant oil fields that are keeping the world's economy going. There's 60,000 oil fields in the world. 13 of them supply 25% of our oil. And the balance, less than 1%, supply half our oil. Most of them are in decline. So you'd think this would be in the news. You'd think that rather than the comings and goings of some celebrity going in and out of rehab, or what happened to this or that professional athlete in their marital life, you'd think that people would start paying attention. And interestingly, some important people are paying attention, but you never see it on the evening news. A couple of years ago, the Pentagon published something called the Joint Operating Environment Report, and they said, you know, about 2012, we're going to run out of spare capacity, and by 2015, we're going to have a net shortfall of oil available to us. And shortly thereafter, the big insurance giant Lloyd's of London came out with a report that said the same thing. And shortly after that, a big investment group in England headed by Richard Branson, who heads up an airline and a number of other companies, yeah, somewhere around 2015, we're going to start running short. So you'd think that governments around the world would start paying a little bit of attention, because we can't run a modern global industrial economy without adequate supplies of oil. It so happens that for the last decade, non-conventional oils have been making up the difference. Some of these non-conventional oils and fuels come from natural gas, but more and more they're coming from our farms. That is biodiesel, ethanol, fuels made right here, our soil, our oil. You've got to be absolutely respectful of Worley and Obetz to have taken the moral stance to say we're going to stop sending money to terrorists, we're going to stop enabling people to hurt our troops, we're going to keep our energy dollars at home recirculating in the economy. And you've got to appreciate also what it means when we export dollars overseas. A few years ago, Senator Richard Lugar, who's a Republican from Indiana, held hearings and he said, let's get experts here to say, what does it cost for us to keep our Navy in the Persian Gulf to protect the supplies of Persian oil? Because it doesn't show up at the gas pump, but we're paying for it through our defense bills. So what does it cost us? So he invited the best economists and experts in the country to come in and crunch some numbers. And it turns out that by some accounts, we may be paying $5 a gallon additional for imported oil just for the military cost to protect it. But when you hide it in other budgets, it doesn't rest on our conscience. So that means that as we continue to grow the biofuel market in Pennsylvania, and please understand, there are people in this world who do not wish renewable energy well, who think that solar and biofuels and everything else is a boondoggle, and that we can't possibly wean ourselves from foreign energy dependency. But we certainly can. We can do it not only by focusing on what we can make here, but understanding the energy technology powerhouse that Pennsylvania has become. In the last 5 years, Pennsylvania state government has brought in over $2 billion worth of new foreign investment to create jobs here in Pennsylvania. Companies like Gamesa, the big wind turbine company, Iberdrola, the big renewable energy utility, Conergy, the solar developer, so on and on and on. These are some of the few sectors of our economy that are still creating manufacturing jobs. And when people in the political sphere or people with vested interest to protect say, oh, this stuff doesn't work, we'll never be independent, tell them baloney. Right here in Pennsylvania, we are making a difference. In fact, there's stuff coming into the marketplace in the next couple of years that will turn heads all over the world. Let me tell you about a couple of technologies that are homegrown here. One is a new version of ground source heat pump. Now, the ground source heat pump model that you see in there is already maybe 2 times more efficient than the conventional heat pump we have outside our house. This new heat pump will be 5 times more efficient than the current ground source heat pump. And it's made right here in Pennsylvania. You'll be able to run it with solar panels, and we won't have to depend on, say, foreign oil to run peaking engines on a hot sunny day like this, now that it's getting warmer, because we will have the means, just by energy efficiency and innovation, to take better care of ourselves. We also have a new way of making biodiesel that should be introduced sometime within the next year. Rather than using chemicals, which sometimes we have to use to make biodiesel, we make it with high pressure fluids. No waste, no pollution, no nothing, and 20% more yield out of the soybeans or the seed oil crops. So there are things going on in Pennsylvania, things going on all around us that will help ensure our energy future. But all of you will have an opportunity, especially we're in the middle of an election cycle. We've got a governor's race. We've got a lot of House and Senate races here. We've got national races. If you have a chance to talk to people who are running for office, ask them what they have done and what they're going to do to follow the lead of Seth Obetz and his team here at AMERIgreen to actually do something to reduce our dependence on foreign oil and prosper our own economy in the process. So it's an absolute honor to be here. I always enjoy these events, and we the people can do a lot if we put our shoulder to the wheel. So let's keep the pressure up for homegrown fuels, and let's not let anybody tell us it isn't possible. America is the land of the art of the possible, and we all need to remember that in the days ahead. Thanks a lot.